The first time my future mother-in-law saw my father, she didn't try to hide the way her smile faltered. It was subtle, a tightening around the eyes, a pause half a second too long before she reached out her hand. But I saw it. I'd grown up reading micro-expressions in rooms full of strangers who underestimated us. My father wore his usual outfit, pressed but modest charcoal suit, old-fashioned wristwatch, shoes polished to a dull shine. No designer labels, no flashy cufflinks, no gold rings. He carried himself the way he always had, quiet, observant, composed. To me he looked like strength. To them he looked like poor. That evening was our first official dinner with my fiancé Daniel's family. They had chosen the most exclusive restaurant in the city, the kind where the waiters glide instead of walk and the menu doesn't list prices. Daniel squeezed my hand under the table. "Relax," he whispered. I wasn't nervous about the food. I was nervous about them. His father, Richard, owned a chain of luxury car dealerships. His mother, Eleanor, chaired charity galas and served on museum boards. Their world was built on appearances, tailored suits, curated friendships, country club memberships. My world was simpler. My father and I lived in a modest house in an old neighborhood. He drove a 10-year-old sedan. He never talked about money. Because money was never something he needed to talk about. "So," Eleanor said, lifting her wine glass delicately, "what do you do, mister?" "Ramen," my father replied gently, "just ramen is fine." "And what line of work are you in, Mr. Ramen?" "I invest," he said. She smiled politely. "How entrepreneurial." My father nodded. No elaboration. No list of achievements. No explanation that he owned controlling shares in multiple international tech firms. No mention of the private equity company he built from scratch 25 years ago. No hint that financial magazines had once called him the silent architect of modern infrastructure. He hated publicity, always had. I tried to steer the conversation elsewhere, but it didn't matter. They had already decided who he was. Throughout dinner, subtle jabs slipped between polite phrases. "Daniel's always been used to a certain lifestyle. We're planning the wedding at the Grand Monarch Hotel. It's quite prestigious." Of course, weddings can be financially overwhelming for some families. Each sentence wrapped in silk, edged in steel. My father only smiled. After dinner, when we walked back to our car, the older sedan parked between two imported sports cars, I felt my chest burning. "I'm sorry," I muttered. "For what?" he asked. "For them." He looked at me confused. "Why?" "They think you're small." He chuckled softly. "People see what they're trained to see. And you're okay with that. I've spent my whole life building things quietly. Noise is for people who need validation." That was my father. Quiet. Unassuming. Unshakable. The wedding planning only made things worse. Eleanor took control almost immediately. Guest list, venue, catering, floral arrangements flown in from Europe. Every decision came with commentary. "We wouldn't want anything modest. Daniel has a reputation to uphold. Some families contribute differently." That last one was said while looking directly at me. When the topic of financial contributions came up, my father simply said, "Whatever makes the children happy." He transferred a sum to my account the next day without a word. It covered more than half the wedding. I never told Daniel's parents. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to see how far their assumptions would go. Maybe I wanted them to reveal themselves fully. They did. On the morning of the wedding, my father arrived at the Grand Monarch alone. He refused the chauffeured car I offered. "I'll come in my own," he said. When he stepped into the marble lobby, I saw it happen again. The glances. The measuring. The silent judgment. Eleanor stood near the entrance greeting guests in a silver gown that shimmered under chandelier light. When she saw my father approach, her smile thinned. "Oh," she said, "you made it." "I wouldn't miss my daughter's wedding," he replied. She looked him over. "We've arranged seating for close family near the front, but if you're more comfortable." "I'm quite comfortable," he said calmly. Daniel noticed the tension and quickly intervened, ushering my father inside. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Sunlight poured through stained glass windows, music swelled. I walked down the aisle holding my father's arm. His grip was steady. proud, unbothered. As we reached the altar, he kissed my forehead. You deserve joy, he whispered. Then he took his seat. I didn't know then that the real ceremony hadn't even begun. The reception hall glittered like something out of a royal gala, crystal centerpieces, 5-course dinner, a live orchestra. Speeches came after dessert. Richard spoke first. He praised tradition, family legacy, two great families joining as one. There was polite applause. Then Eleanor stood. She smiled sweetly as she tapped the microphone. We're thrilled to welcome our son's bride into our family, she began. Marriage is not just about love but about stability, about shared values, about ensuring a future built on equal foundations. I felt my stomach tighten. She turned slightly toward my father's table. Some of us have spent decades building prosperity to pass down. It's comforting to know Daniel will continue to live in the manner he's accustomed to. There it was. Not subtle anymore. Laughter rippled awkwardly through the room. My father remained seated, hands folded. I stood up before I could stop myself. That's enough. But my father gently raised his hand. Let her finish, he said quietly. Eleanor blinked, slightly flustered. Well, I only meant that financial security matters in marriage. My father rose slowly from his chair. The room went still. He didn't look angry. He looked patient. He walked toward the stage, every step unhurried. When he reached Eleanor, he gave a small nod. May I? She hesitated, then handed him the microphone. He turned to face the room. My daughter, he began, has never needed anyone's wealth to define her future. She is intelligent, capable, and stronger than anyone in this room realizes. Silence. I raised her to value integrity over image, substance over spectacle. He paused, then continued. As for financial security, I believe she will be just fine. A murmur spread through the guests. He reached into his suit pocket and removed his phone. Since we are discussing foundations, perhaps transparency is appropriate. He tapped the screen, then turned it outward toward the crowd closest to the stage. I recognized the interface immediately. It was the internal dashboard of Raman Global Holdings. His company. The valuation figure sat at the top. $18.4 billion. Gasps erupted. Richard stood abruptly. What is this? My father looked at him calmly. Documentation. He gestured toward a group seated near the back. 3 individuals in tailored suits rose to their feet. Our legal and executive team, my father said. They insisted on attending today despite my objections. One of them stepped forward. Raman Global currently holds majority stakes in infrastructure projects across 4 continents. The room buzzed. Eleanor's face drained of color. You're saying? Yes, my father replied gently. I built a small investment firm many years ago. It grew. Small. The understatement of the century. He continued, I never believed wealth required announcement, but I will not allow my daughter to be diminished. Daniel looked between us stunned. Why didn't you tell me? My father smiled faintly, because I wanted to know whether you loved her without it. Daniel swallowed hard. The orchestra members exchanged confused glances. Waiters froze mid-step. Guests whispered furiously. Eleanor gripped the edge of the podium. This is absurd. My father met her eyes. No, what's absurd is believing worth can be measured by clothing or cars or seating arrangements. Richard slowly sat down. The power in the room had shifted. Completely. My father handed the microphone back. I wish the couple a life built on respect, he said simply. Then he returned to his seat. No dramatic flourish. No gloating. Just truth. The rest of the evening unfolded differently. People who had barely acknowledged him earlier now approached with eager smiles and business cards. He declined them all. Daniel found me near the balcony. I had no idea, he said quietly. I know. Why didn't you tell me? Would it have changed anything? He hesitated. That pause told me everything. I love you, he insisted. I believe you, I said, but love shouldn't require a balance sheet. He looked ashamed. Across the room, Eleanor sat stiffly, avoiding eye contact with anyone. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked small. Later that night, as guests departed, My father and I stood outside beneath the cool air. You didn't have to do that, I said. Yes, I did. You always said money shouldn't speak. He nodded. It shouldn't, but sometimes silence allows disrespect to grow. I slipped my arms around him. I'm proud of you, I whispered. He smiled against my hair. I'm proud of you. Remember, wealth is a tool, character is the legacy. Behind us, the grand doors of the hotel glowed under golden light. Inside, reputations were recalibrating. But none of that mattered. Because the truth had never been about billions. It was about dignity. And dignity, unlike money, cannot be inherited. It must be lived.